Good day, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. We're going to get right into it here. Sure, a lot of you know at least one of these two people, the guy on the right, but you might not know the man on the left. He's famous for delivering a talk that was based on answering one question. What wisdom would you try to impart to the world if you knew it was your last chance? This man, his name is Randy Pausch. He was a father, husband, and a computer scientist at Carnegie Mellon University in Pittsburgh. Randy was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer and was asked to give a last lecture, which was one in a series of professors that would imagine what they would talk about in their final lesson. And, most people don't deliver one under such pressing circumstances. If you have a minute, I would highly recommend that you take, some time, look it up on YouTube. And it's about a little over an hour long, but very much worth the viewing. You can see he did, pass away of pancreatic cancer shortly after that at age 45. I'm sorry, he died at age 47. And actually, just before he did, for those in Virginia, interesting fact, he actually moved his family to Chesapeake, Virginia, because he felt that would be the right place for them to live after he passed away. Some key, kind of quotes from this story and some key things to kind of take away. You can see kind of a few quotes here. One that really stuck out to me. The key question to keep asking is, are you spending your time on the right things? Because time is all that you have. One that I think about a lot as well, be prepared. Luck is truly where preparation meets opportunity. Now, those who or somebody who you may be a little bit more familiar with, especially if you ever watched The Sopranos, is James Gandolfini. And the details of his death stand in stark contrast to that of Randy Pausch. Randy was well prepared, took every opportunity to prepare his family and think a lot and kind of solidify his legacy. Whereas, unlike him, James Gandolfini died very suddenly at age 51 while on a trip to Italy. It was a shock to his fans, his family, his friends, and unfortunately, he didn't really do a good job in planning his affairs. He left 80% of his estate to his sisters and a daughter, and he did it in a way that triggered a $30 million tax bill. So, unlike Pausch, Gandolfini didn't get to play a role in writing his final legacy. Instead, his ending had a strong resemblance to the controversial last scene of The Sopranos. And if you were a fan, you might remember it. The screen goes black. Finale to the six-season series was just left unresolved. Very jarring, just as James Gandolfini's life ended in real life as well. So you might say, why is Emmett James, why is the Wealth Cycle Advisors team bringing up these stories, right? And what we're going to talk about tonight might seem a little bit different than the average conversations that you might have with us as your financial advisors. But we're going to talk about 6 steps to legacy planning for your generations. And you want to think about that in terms of yourself, your children, your grandchildren. Maybe even you think about it in terms of your parents or your grandparents, right? And so we're going to go through this over the next few minutes or so today. One thing you can see, one problem that we face, 55% of Americans don't have a will. 55% of adults. That's down from 51% who reported they did have a will in 2005. And so, part of the issue with that, if you pass away without a will, without a trust, there's no real direction to your family. Family members can, oftentimes seem like they're in great agreement, seem like they're in accord, but, things change when people pass away. And, we've seen deaths cause disagreements within families that last for years as well. Also, just from a logistics standpoint, without a will, without a trust, in some cases, an estate can go into probate and then can be divided potentially according to state law versus according to our own, wishes. Another thing that could come about is that, there might be no final message to family members, which that could be something that, might be important for you to think about and important for you to leave to your family. Some, for some, there's, a fate that's worse than death, which is sudden incapacity. Whether it's you suffer a stroke, get hit by a bus, and, instead of dying, you end up in a coma. For some that can, maybe seem like it's, worse than dying unprepared because you go on living and you might be able to see things that are being done not according to your wishes, but maybe you can't speak for yourself, or, maybe you can't quite get the words out that you want to get across, right? So in that situation, what can go wrong? Maybe nobody knows your medical wishes, right? Maybe there's nobody appointed to make those medical decisions, for you. And what we deal with a lot is clients who maybe have this type of situation, and then nobody has the authority to handle their finances. They're then forced with, going to a lawyer and having documents drawn up. And James is going to talk a lot about these kind of documents as well. One of the biggest kind of hurdles to getting to estate planning is, estate planning really means thinking about dying. And people equate estate planning with death planning and therefore block it out and never do anything, or just don't do enough with it. Maybe they do the bare minimum, check those boxes, but don't ever kind of see it through to fruition or see it quite to the finish line. Quote here kind of sums it up. One of the greatest obstacles in estate planning is the perpetuating of death denial. Most people don't want to plan for post-death lives because death is a scary topic to even think about. And this is true on a financial level, but probably more importantly, it's true on an emotional and spiritual level as well. Lifetime experiences, hard-earned wisdom and insight that make up our values might never get discussed and might never be passed on to the next generation. And that can be a real loss for everyone. And so the consequences of not having an estate plan can really be tragic as well. Lawrence Greenberg notes here, heirs may be subjected to a number of obstacles such as probate, creditors, lawsuits, judgments, legal fees, all of which can compromise the value of the legacy. So common problems that arise when no one thinks about estate planning: no will or trust, no advanced healthcare directives, maybe overlooked provisions for like guardianships of minors. If I were to pass away, who would look after my kids? Who would want that responsibility? No tax planning. Could also be financial strains and cash shortages. We've heard about situations where folks are forced to sell maybe a piece of real estate, maybe a family homestead, to come up with cash to pay for creditors, pay off creditors, or to pay for final expenses, or that sort of thing as well. Another thing that can be a problem is decisions are not communicated to the next generation. Details aren't revealed until after death, and that can really kind of lead to potential family tension. And especially, when if things aren't if not everybody is on the same page and kind of in agreement before somebody passes away, and then maybe a will is read and somebody's caught off guard and surprised, that can lead to tension for sure. And it can lead to, reluctance to make a plan or to update a plan. So I don't think anybody would say that that's really an ideal picture, ideal scenario. When you look at, some of the benefits of estate planning, and that's why, attorneys, accountants, financial professionals like ourselves, press our clients, oftentimes for years to do estate planning. The benefits are, it spells out your healthcare wishes, possessions go to heirs and who you choose for them to go to without wrangling or dispute, can avoid additional or unplanned legal expenses, and it provides for loved ones that might not otherwise be protected. So traditional estate planning often doesn't capture the fullness of our lives and values. So one thing that might be missing are the intangible assets that we've collected. So the fruits of a life well lived, right? So this can include two things. One is character assets, which that might be your values, health, spirituality, heritage, purpose, life experiences, talents, and plans for giving. And the other being your intellectual assets. That might be things like your business systems or alliances, ideals, skills, traditions, reputation, and wisdom. So you're probably sitting there saying, "Oh, this is a pretty grim picture. We don't want that to happen in our family. Is there a way to pursue all these things, not just the nuts and bolts of traditional estate planning?" And that's why we're, together here today, is to talk more about generational planning. It recognizes that we're all much more than just our physical assets, and we need to account for such within our estate planning as well. Generational planning is a modern, intentional, two-phase process that expands estate planning's reach and helps you plan your legacy. So the first objective of this is legacy planning, which is a process for passing on a family's tangible wealth and assets. While the second objective would be conveying your family's wishes, your family's values and history to the next legacy, to the next generation. Both of these are really done for the next generation. And it's important, also to say that generational planning is not driven by documents in the way that, an estate planning process might be. Oftentimes when we think about estate planning, some of you might be picturing like that big 3-ring binder that's probably about 4 inches thick. Maybe it's sitting in your fire safe box if you've done any estate planning, or maybe it's in on a bookshelf, wherever it might be in a safe place. This, isn't going to be quite as necessarily buttoned up or stuffy as that might, kind of feel. So, thinking about, kind of the people closest to you, here are some thoughts on key considerations to a successful legacy plan for the generations. First, you want to think about your spouse if you're married, right? If you were to die first, you need to ensure sufficient income for the rest of your spouse's life. This can often be done through things like life insurance, or just making sure that there are enough assets, retirement accounts, investment accounts to draw from. You probably also want to make sure that whoever goes first, the surviving spouse, would be able to manage the finances alone. We've seen in many cases where, a husband handles everything, right? Or a wife handles everything. And then they pass away, and then the other one comes in, sits down with us and says, "Where do I go? What do I do? How do I do this by myself?" And sometimes it's things like investment decisions and financial decisions that we're here to guide people through that process. But things in terms of paying the cable bill, or paying the electric bill that some folks maybe have never even dealt with, right? Sometimes over a 20, 30, 40-year marriage, things can be a lot different, right? Children also need to be prepared for any potential inheritances, right? We've heard stories about things like trust fund babies or inheritors who have no appreciation or respect for the money that was left for them. Oftentimes that can lead them to spending wildly. If somebody feels like it was a gift, or just plopped right on there, it can be easier to spend in some cases. The other side of that is true also, where we've seen some clients who inherit money and then never want to spend it, right? They feel like, oh, that's not mine, that's mom's or that's dad's, and they can feel kind of, almost handcuffed in a way, to where they don't want to, spend that money that was left to them as well. And then in that case, that's really not what the people who left it really wish for those funds either. So it's important to have that discussion, just so that inheritors can feel liberated to spend what's being passed, but not in a wild sense, right? And maybe talking about some things that could be prudent to spend that money on. When you think about grandchildren, you want them to understand how you lived and what you lived for. Sometimes, some folks, it's easier to skip their children and pass their assets to their grandchildren, or pass their values to their grandchildren. Maybe when you think about, somebody like, who's maybe 5, 6, 7 years old, going over to grandma and grandpa's, they've got stories, they've got time to tell it. Whereas, their parents might not have the same time or patience to tell those stories, and pass on values to those children. Um, and outside of that, you want to think about maybe just the world at large. Are there, people or organizations that you contribute to that you feel do really good work? And you want to include them in a legacy plan as well. So now we're going to hop right into, a 6-step or 6-part legacy plan, and following a process to start leaving your mark for the next generation. And with that, I will pass things over to James Kometz.
Thanks, Emmett. So yeah, we're going to quickly go over, I know this is going to be very overwhelming, and so kind of walk you through a 6-step process to put all these things in order for you. And first is planning for incapacity. And this is something really everyone of all ages should consider, because an accident or stroke or anything like that could happen at any point in time to anybody. And so there are two main documents here that we want to take into consideration to help. And one is your advance directive for healthcare. And this is simply answering the questions of what you want to have happen to you for your healthcare, in the case you're not able to speak for yourself at any time. So simple form, you answer some questions that'll put that in place. You choose whether you want it to be your spouse or your family, friends, who you would want to answer those questions and deal with medical doctors, whoever, to make sure you're taken care of the way you want. The second form is to deal with your finances, and this is what we call a power of attorney. And this is to put somebody in place to legally be able to handle any of your finances, whether it's paying your bills or investment decisions or anything like that. A power of attorney will put somebody in place to handle those things, so that your wishes are carried through and you're taken care of, your finances are taken care of the way that you want them to. Next step is going to be getting organized. So this is one we all say we're going to do, we want to do, we mean to do, and kind of gets backburnered. But really, this is important. It's getting everything together. So in order to do estate planning, you really want to get a list compiled of all of your assets. So not only your bank accounts and your investments, but also your physical assets, your jewelry, your anything that's important to you and has value. You want to get together, one, just so that your whether it's your kids or your spouse or whoever, they need to know what you have. So it's important that there's a list together of all the different things you have. where you keep them, who are the beneficiaries on these if they have beneficiaries, or if they're physical assets, where do you keep them? Now, so becoming even more important is passwords. So, a lot of things are becoming digital, and if no one knows how to get into your accounts or where they are, it can make things very difficult. So, having a list of what you have not only will help keep things organized for yourself, but also for your spouse or your kids when the time comes. Um, Make sure that they know where it is, and any special instructions or anything like that would be very helpful in this process. So step two is getting organized. Step three is starting to think about the people that you love, and the causes and things you care about. So here, you've answered a lot of questions, but in a lot of things we take into consideration here, your estate might be a very simple thing. If something happens to you, it might go to your spouse, or it might go to your kids, or it might be very, very straightforward. But what if something happens in that plan and it changes? What if your spouse passes first, or what if your kids pass before you, or do you have grandkids that come into the picture later on, or special needs? If you have a child with special needs, there are a lot of different things and circumstances that may be different to you than the next person. So you need to think about all those what ifs that could come up, and make sure you have a plan for that. And here's a time to start talking to your beneficiaries about the inheritance. So you at some point in time, your spouse or your kids or grandkids, or whoever, when it's appropriate, needs to know what's going to happen so that they can prepare as well. So step three in the process is considering your contingencies and your special circumstances, and answers those what ifs in the plan. Next is making everything official. So start working with the financial professionals to put these things in order and make them legal. So in here, a will isn't always the way. So some assets can be transferred through titling, such as beneficiaries or trusts. So one thing a lot of people aren't aware of is your IRAs, for instance, that have a beneficiary on it, or your investment accounts or bank accounts. If they have a beneficiary on those, that supersedes any will or anything else in place. So it's really important that you know first who your beneficiaries are on your accounts that are able to have them. Make sure that's all in order and up to date. So we recommend reviewing those frequently just to make sure. But then some things, your real estate or any of your other assets that may or may not have a beneficiary on them, that's where wills can come into play, is when you get to the probate stage. So you want to make sure you get with an attorney that can design the will for you to make sure your assets and things go where you want them to go. Depending on if your estate is a simple estate or if it's complicated, your attorney can help you design that will to make sure your assets pass the best way, and any wishes you want carried out, make sure they're carried out the correct way. So an attorney will be huge in the estate planning process, and you want to make sure that all your wishes become on paper and legalized at this point in time.
One thing that I'll just kind of piggyback there, if that's okay, James.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, well, we can help people with kind of answering some questions here and that sort of thing. I want to say it's important to note we are not attorneys, we are not lawyers. We cannot draft up any of these documents or anything along those lines for you. But we have been able to answer questions on, do I need this? Do I need that? That sort of thing as well. So just quick kind of disclaimer. We are
Yes.
not lawyers. If you need one, we've got some that we can refer you to, though.
Absolutely. Thank you. So step five is this is where you're creating your family legacy, like Emmett mentioned earlier, is more so you want to make sure you leave your mark behind, and you want to, now's your time to put things in place so that your kids, grandkids, whoever can really remember you the way you want them to remember you. So some ideas here are just simply writing down some memories, or some scrapbooks or photo albums, or if grandma does cooking with the grandkids, maybe some of those recipes, put them together, or anything like that you like to do will be really important for leaving a legacy and how you're remembered. Another idea, I've had a client that will has a separate email and will take pictures and memories and put in that email, and in her will, she's going to make sure that the email is distributed so everybody can see the memories that were taken along the way and whatnot. So here's where you can choose how you want to be remembered, and leaving behind the important pieces and whatnot, with memories and in different ways. So here's your chance to be creative and leave that legacy, essentially. And then the last step in it all is monitoring and updating your strategy. So, um, once we have everything in place, that's great. But as we all know, things happen. So you might get married, you might get divorced, die, people are born and have grandkids. You might change your mind about someone you wanted to leave money to, or just different things happen over time. And so, um, you're just like anything else, you're able to make changes to these different documents as your wishes change. And so we want to make sure if that we're reviewing these frequently, and your wishes are staying up to date and reflected in your different documents here. So you don't want to have the wrong people inherit your money. You want to make your wishes and carried out to the best of your ability here. So with all of that, that's a brief kind of overview of those steps. And so where we go from here is let's work together. So like Emmett said, we're not the attorney, but we can help help kind of guide you along the way. We work together and build a strategy. So the first step is just establishing a timeline. So you want to get your goals in place and the timetable. So an example we show here is week 1, sign your healthcare directive. Week 2, sign a power of attorney. Week 3, make a list of your accounts and passwords. Week 4, gather important papers. So that's just an example of one way to do it. But it's let's work together and figure out what needs to be done for your estate, where you're at in the process. Maybe you started some of this or have some of these things in place, but not all of it. So we can help guide through the process and start connecting you with any individuals you may need. So we've got resources. We know estate planning attorneys. We've got CPAs. All the people that put make these documents legal, we can refer you to if you don't have one of your own, and can make your wishes legal on paper and carried out, and make sure all the estate planning documents are taken care of essentially. Next slide. Yeah, we hold you accountable. We'll have frequent check-ins and deadlines to stay on track to do this at your pace. But we want to make sure these things get done for you and your family's taken care of in this journey. So if you'd like, request a planning assessment. We can once again see where you're at. I'll go through these different steps with you and help you fulfill these and make sure they get completed to whatever your wishes are. Imagine how you'll feel at the end when your legacy is all set up, and what that means is you'll have a trusted person ready to step in and help if it becomes necessary. Your records are all organized and accessible. Your loved ones will be provided for, and you'll be remembered for your unique contributions to the world. You feel much better once all these things are in place, knowing that it's all done, and you can continue living your life, and things will go the way you want when the time's necessary. So legacy planning is not hard. You just have to get started, and we're here to help with along the way. So we appreciate your time. Hope this was helpful, and if you have any questions or need help along the way, please reach out to us, and any of the advisors here at Wealth Cycle will be happy to help in any way we can.
Yeah, one thing that I would say, and if anybody has questions, feel free to pop those into the chat box as well. But just like many things in life, legacy planning is not difficult. It's simple, but it takes time, right? And so that's the biggest thing, is just the commitment, right? And so that's why we hold ourselves out as an accountability partner for you. If you're looking to step along this process, that's something that we'll step with you. We'll help you with that. We're here, like I said, to bounce any ideas off of, but also to share our expertise and connect you with those who can help you with any of the documents as well. So all right, perfect. I don't see any questions popping in right this minute, but as James mentioned, thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule to spend some time with us today on this important topic. If you have any kind of personal questions or anything, feel free to reach out to us, and we look forward to assisting you from there. Thanks.